Yo, what up, what up, what up, what up? What's good, everybody?
Good night. I can't even say good evening.
Good evening.
Good night.
Good evening. You know, that good night is a West Indian thing.
Really?
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, good night's a West Indian thing. Good
You don't
evening.
think other people say good night?
I don't know. I learned that I actually learned this from when I was pastoring at Ephesus, and R.C. Connor, Pastor Connor, did a funeral at Ephesus, and he was talking about how Americans don't say good night, they say good evening, because good night means almost like death, like that was it. So they say good evening, not good night. I might be crazy, but but that's what I believe, that I heard, that good night is a Caribbean thing. It's not an American thing.
Huh. Never knew that. Never knew that before. Okay, but thanks for the...
Yeah, so if
I
there's
never heard of that before.
somebody in the comments that wants to confirm, please correct me if I am incorrect. But usually, when I'm at church and it's in the evening, I don't say good night. I say good evening.
I guess it is. I guess it is a, I don't know. I probably have to observe it a little bit more, listening to other, to non-Caribbean people, what they say at night. Mm-hmm. But good to know. Good to know.
Adriana's like bon sabbat, so I'll take that.
Yes. Happy Sabbath.
Yep. Marvin says it's all West Indian.
Wow. I never, sorry, this thing is screeching. I would have never thought, I thought everyone says good night. Like you say good morning. Just like you say good evening. Like it's the same thing.
Right. No, it's different. Good evening. Like, when do we say good evening, though? West Indians don't say good evening.
Yes, they do.
When?
Good evening. The evening starts at like what? 6 o'clock, 6 o'clock, between 5, I'd say, yeah, maybe about 6 o'clock to about 8 is evening. And then after that is night. That's why I was just like, good night.
Okay. So when you're going to bed, it's good night.
It's good night. That's
but
right.
When you're coming over to somebody's house in the evening, it's good evening.
Yeah. You say, hi, good evening. Or even if you're talking to somebody, be like, hey, good evening. And it's not night.
Right.
It's not after 8 or 9.
Right. So when you walk into the house, hello, good evening, as Adriana said.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I just want to confirm. I mean, Marvin helped confirm. He said that, yes, good night is a West Indian thing. Mm-hmm. I just want to know from somebody who's American, do you say good night or do you just say good evening?
You're talking about a greeting.
A greeting, or just in general.
Yeah, like, I think like if we're talking on the phone, like you'll say, all right, good night. Mm-hmm. If you say, lots of children's books says good night, like good night, moon, good night, whatever else. I don't know.
Yeah, I think what he was saying was that good night it seems so final. Good night seems final.
I never heard of that.
Good evening meant something different. But
I mean, I could see it though. I could see for some people why it seems final, but for us, I think it's a sign of respect, right? West Indians Caribbean people were very much into respect, being respectful. So when you answer the phone, you don't say hello, you say hello, good evening, or hello, good night, or whatever it is.
Yeah, look, Adriana said, none of my American friends or my ex-husband's family says good night.
That's good to know. Never, ever put 2 and 2 together. But good night, everyone. Happy Sabbath. Happy Saturday. It is March 8th. 2024. I believe today we're also celebrating women. For the whole month, it's Women's Month, but I think today specifically we're celebrating women. So shout out to all the women.
Shout out to all the women. If it weren't for no women, we wouldn't be here right now.
Right.
Shout out to all the hip hop songs about women. Dear Mama. Mm-hmm. You know what I'm saying? Tupac. Kanye had his Hey Mama song. Pac's bars, the blacker the berry, the sweeter the juice. Come on now. So yeah, so shout out to International Women's Day for all the women trailblazers. Shout out to all the women that come in and fix things that we mess up. That's what women do, particularly to black women. After black
Yes.
men destroy it, they come in and clean up after the mess.
Mercy.
And then we bring in a white man to take the credit.
Mercy.
Yep, I said it.
In other news. But yeah, so really glad to be in this space with you all. I hope you guys had a pretty good week. Your week was what? What was your week like?
My
this
week was good. It was productive. It was
That's good. Productive is good.
I had some challenges, but came them, and I definitely don't feel like I did last week.
Good.
Last week was wild. This week was a little
Better.
Even keeled.
Okay.
Nice pace.
Okay, that's what's up. That's what's up. I'm just happy to be here, to be alive. Period. So we're gonna get right into it because we know that we came on late already. I think we came on at 8:20, and we already know that time is of the essence. We're gonna get into it after we talk about this particular thing, and then we're gonna kind of just leave it alone. More specifically, last night was the State of the Union address from the president. And of course, I feel like if you are a Republican or conservative, you would see his presentation to render a different kind of tone, a different kind of vibe, or different kind of feeling. Like you'll walk away, right? Depending on which side of the line you tread. For Democrat, right, you probably will feel a little bit different than what the Republicans, conservatives would feel. But just going to kind of briefly talk about it. I actually think that it was probably one of the better State of the Union addresses that I've experienced to date. I know that I've sat through a few of them, but this one just kind of captivated me. His speech captivated me in so many different ways. And I was honestly impressed with what he had to say, and the energy and the his what they call it, like he was a bit like Mr. Troll, like he was trolling some of the people.
Yeah.
But I think his it just seems as though like even his bounce back and his ad lib was really was enjoyable. I actually enjoyed it. Like I was just like, wow, this is pretty cool.
Yeah, I think he did a good job. I think he did what he was supposed to do. He did have some hiccups. I think the part when he called undocumented people illegals.
Yeah.
Like we don't say that. No human is illegal. But he fixed it right after with his comments right after it. But he came out swinging. I was actually surprised at his tone, his confidence, because coming into this speech, there's always been the narrative about he's too old, he doesn't have energy, and he spoke for over an hour. His stuttering came out a little bit, but he bounced back. He laid it down. I like how you said when he was calling out the Republicans. He's like, "Oh, you don't like that? Oh, you didn't like that? Oh, that's interesting." He was. I think he's just a naturally funny person. Like he seems like he's like the jokey grandpa. Like he'll play pranks and that kind of stuff. I will say this. I don't know what side of the fence you are on, but that Republican response was terrible to me. Like it's usually better than that oftentimes, but that was just, it seemed, in my opinion, not speaking for anybody else, it seemed fake. It seemed over the top. There was like a lot of acting and theatrics in it. I don't think she obviously wasn't talking to me and my family.
No, she was talking to a very specific group
to her
of people.
specific group of people. So it did not connect with me in any way. It wasn't seem factual. It was just like, and I'm like, who are you talking to? And also was messed up too, I think, is one of the commentators made it. It's like, obviously we know why they chose her, because she's young and she's from Alabama and Roe versus Wade. I mean, the IVF thing, Alabama messed it up. Not Alabama messed it up. You know, the Supreme Court messed it up by overturning Roe versus Wade, which leaned into no protections for IVF. Alabama had to scramble to fix that. And so they put something in place. But just with her being at a kitchen table,
right,
and her sitting down, like, who are you supposed to be connecting with? Like, no, put her in the office with her, you know, with the senator representation, political thing. But I don't know who crafted it. I just was like, what am I doing watching
I
this?
think someone, the lady on one of the commentators on CNN called it bizarre to say
it was a
lack
bizarre
of ability.
tactic.
Yeah, it was bizarre with the kitchen and her sitting. But I think she was definitely targeting suburban moms. I think that's who she went after. She wasn't talking to me. She definitely wasn't talking to you. But again, it is what it is.
Yeah.
It's politics, and it will just continue to live on and go on or whatever.
Politics.
But yeah, so just wanted to kind of make mention of it. And if you haven't watched it, if you care to, go ahead and do it after the Sabbath or whenever you want to.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, we really need to watch it.
All right. So some of you may or may not know that Tye Tribbett, the gospel artist, I feel like he's always pushed the envelope. I remember when he came on the scene with No Way I Can Make It Without You, right? He was doing all the dancing and all the things. I definitely felt like he's always pushed the envelope, or he went against the grain. Like, I feel like he's always gone against the grain.
Yeah,
the
he
trend.
was like a refreshing version of Kirk Franklin.
Yes.
Right? Like Kirk was his era, and then you saw Tye came on the scene, and it was just like he just took it by storm. And to this date, he's still killing it with the music, because Only One Night Though, that's my joint.
Only One Night Though.
Only One Night Though. And him live in concert, you gonna get a show, you gonna worship. It's just, I mean, that last album, the Live in Orlando album, for me is, I think, one of the best gospel releases in a while.
It's true. Facts.
Yeah, I like Anthony Brown. I like Jonathan McReynolds. I like some of the new stuff, but that Live in Orlando album I could play that straight through.
Yeah, and bump to it.
They bump to it.
It's just the same way. It's true. It's true. So Tye Tribbett recently went on to Breakfast Club. So first of all, I'm going to put it out there. I never, ever watched the show Breakfast Club or listen to the podcast or whatever it is that they have going on. I just don't. I probably see clips of it. I see clips of it every now and again, like people taking sound bites or whatever, but I've never watched it. So this was my first time watching this show from beginning to end. And I think when I first saw it on Tye Tribbett's Instagram, and essentially it was just a sound bite of him saying what he said. And of course, the saints or ain'ts, whomever, they were in the comments for sure, kind of ridiculing him, bad-mouthing him, and just really not quite giving him the benefit of the doubt in terms of truly understanding what it is that he said. Like, I know a lot of times, and I know that Breakfast Club probably were intentional about choosing a clip like that because they knew that it would generate this kind of conversation, right? It's very evident. But I think in order for you to sit and type and create an opinion about what it is that he said, I think it's important. I think it would be important for you to go and watch the entire thing, not just get the snippet, right? Because that snippet is intentional, but really and truly understanding what it is that he said and what he meant by it. Unfortunately, a lot of people don't do that. They just, what do they call it? Thing bullies or whatever. What do they call it?
Keyboard bully.
Everybody
got an opinion. It's social media.
Yeah, essentially. So, so what we're gonna do? We're going to play it, just a clip. But again, please go on to Breakfast Club and listen to the entire thing.
Right. So this is what's got the internet going nuts. So 1 minute.
You killed it. You killed that whole thing. I think a lot of pastors were not called the pastor. They just, study, you go to school, and then you just become a pastor, like you become a manager at, Publix or something like that. And that's unfortunate for a lot of people who invest their, money, time, attention, and their soul into people who they believe are literally called from God. I don't believe a lot of pastors are. I think it's a system now. Oh, God. It's a system. Everything is a system, and systems work with or without God. So I think the institution of church is whack. I think how church is ran is whack. I think the religious system and structure is whack. I don't subscribe to it, even though I grew up in it, I benefited from it, but I learned that God is not the church. And once I realized, whoa, God ain't church. That for me, you know what I mean? I ain't from the streets, I'm from the church. So that was a huge thing as well.
It's in the Bible, though, so you can't even find.
All right. So that's just a 1 minute clip. It's about a 1 hour interview. And that's not the whole thing he talks about. There's more stuff. But we just wanted to play the clip that's got the internet going nuts and kind of dissect it and talk about it. So I'll say this. What Tye has said, I don't see no problem with it. I don't think he said anything wrong. Actually, I'm going to shout out Kimon Hines because way back in 2008, he did a youth congress which I was invited to, and it was called I Am the Church. Mm-hmm. I personally don't see why people are up in arms about what he said. I believe we all know it's whack.
Yeah.
Everybody knows it's whack. That's why people ain't coming.
So I think for the protectors of the institution, right, of the church, I think they took offense to the fact that he's calling the church whack. Right?
Right.
And I think that I think a lot of people get lost in the fact that like they don't know how to differentiate between God and the institution. It's almost like they're synonymous. Like God and the institution is one and the same. So that's why a lot of us are so beholden to the church, not to God, right? Or if something happens in the church, so if we're hurt by someone in the church, then we would say God is the one that did this, or like we'll blame God, right? It's because it's almost like we see God and the church as the same thing, but it's not. Like relationship versus attendance are two different things.
Yeah, it's basically it's a man-made institution. Mm-hmm. The church as we know it, as we have it, is not a God-made thing. It is a human-made thing. Now, I think the system needs to be changed. I think it needs to be upgraded. I think we need to focus more on relationship than we more on religion. Mm-hmm. But I do see a place for corporate worship. Mm-hmm. I believe that it's important. I believe that we need it. Do we need it every week? I know I don't.
Right.
I don't need it every week. Mm-hmm. Some people do. Mm-hmm. I do believe that the content within it can be upgraded, can be different, can speak more to what's happening in times. But the whole institution, the whole setup, like call a spade a spade. There's nowhere you can find the institution, particularly that we have in the Bible. Mm-hmm. It came after.
Right.
It was developed after. It was developed in the 1800s mm-hmm. during the rise of capitalism, mm-hmm. right? So the bottom feeds the top. And I think now, I think honestly, and I've been beating this dead
Yeah,
horse
you
for a
have
while.
been,
So that's
wow.
why like I'm kind of like, oh, what he say is not right. I think
Oh,
that
we definitely, let's be clear, and please hold your thought. Let's be clear that I know that this is something that you've been saying for a very long time. So this isn't like oh my gosh, this is like a new phenomenon for you, because I believe you certainly have been saying something similar. You haven't said it's whack in that way, but yes.
yeah, because I think that it can be fixed. I don't know if it actually. I don't even know if it can be fixed. I almost feel like I always compare the church to America and the Constitution. Like it just needs to be America just needs to be blown up and start all over. I think the institution of church and capitalism and money and all that stuff needs to just absolutely go away and just let people be free. But essentially the point I was gonna make was that right now in 2024, this whole system where the bottom feeds the top, it's not working. And I believe leaders know it's not working. But I believe they're too afraid to shift it so that it can work. Because if you shift it so that it works, there's going to be jobs that are going to have to be lost. There's going to have to be some things that are going to have to cut away in order to fix it. But you gotta keep it the way it's going for it to keep surviving until it implodes. And I think we're in the midst of watching it kind of break down before our very eyes. And we're at the point where I think that our church, I can only speak to our church, is going to have a bigger presence overseas than it will in North America and Europe. Like I told, like tonight we typed in Adventist on YouTube, and all I saw was these, first of all, crazy title sermons about that people still preaching about, you're gonna die in fire and all this other stuff, and then it's just nothing but Caribbean people. That's it. Like I'm looking for the American churches, the churches in the United States that's doing stuff, and I don't see it because I really feel like it is imploding. It refuses to pivot, just like General Motors. And that's it. I'm not going to say anything else about it.
Yeah, right. You're going to say, you have a lot more to say. I know this. Let's go to the comments in. Liz said he didn't say Christianity is whack. He said the system is. And this is like, which it is, right? She says when Jesus overturned the tables in the temple, that was Jesus saying this system is whack. Yo, you preaching in the comments, Liz. Diary says, because people hear the church and don't realize we are the church. Facts. Exactly. Not the institution or the brick or the mortar. Exactly. I put up something that Liz said again, because she's legit, definitely saying what needs to be said. And I don't know if it's a wool over some of our eyes where we don't know how to accept the reality of what it is. Like we're afraid to even talk about it. Or if you talk about it, it's almost like you're anti-church or you're anti-God, right? Where it's almost like you're viewed as, like how Tye Tribbett is being viewed right now. Like if you were to go on the post and read those comments, I kind of read through a few of them, and there are people like really going in about him making this comment.
Yeah, when you cannot criticize something or look at it critically, it's an idol.
Wait a minute, what'd you just say?
If you can't look at something critically and analyze it and question it, then it's almost become like an idol.
Wow.
And to the person that says like, hey, like Jesus, this system is whack. The Pharisees and scribes were basically like, what are you talking about? This is our temple. They idolize that thing. So we're in a place where we care more about the institution, preservation, than people, or actually saying, you know what? this thing is not working for this time and place. But we really honestly idolize it to the point where you can't. It's the same thing like with Donald Trump followers. If you can't objectively look at him and say, this man committed crimes, there's something wrong with this, they basically idolize and worship him. And so it's no different with us with how we set up the institution. We idolize it. That if it falls apart, then we are gone. God is angry. If we don't come here every week, God is angry. If we don't follow this system, then God is angry. And then the moment you say something, then you are the heretic.
Wow.
You the one, and it's the same thing with Jesus. Jesus looked at it and he said, you guys idolize this thing. Shut it down because it hurts people. I want you to destroy this temple. They're like, why destroy this temple? Because I am the temple.
Right.
Like if you asked the early believer and said, hey, let's go to church, they would look at you weird. They'd be like, because what do you mean go to church? I am the church. I write my commandments on your heart. I'm building something that's not made of stone, bricks and stone. So I think that's the problem that we're facing now. And I think people over the pandemic had time to look at it and be like, this ain't working for me.
What's interesting is, wow, you just said a whole lot. Honestly, I feel like I need to digest that. But as I listened to the interview and listened to, what's his name, Charlemagne and the other people as they talked and they gave their idea about church and their feelings, their views about church, it sounded pretty similar to what some of us have been talking about. And that kind of caught me off guard in a sense where I felt like it was only an Adventist thing, right? It was only insulated specifically to our church. I didn't know that it necessarily was infecting other denominations, other churches, right? So that was like a huge surprise to me because I was just like, oh shoot, like this thing it's almost a global.
I think it's
not global because I feel like in outside of the America and Europe, I feel like there's life there in terms of like the religion and the institution or whatever. But I just feel like I just didn't know that there were other people that shared the same beliefs or the same ideas regarding church. Yeah.
I almost feel like it's a thing that's catching up to Black people and worship. I'm still like, where are the white Adventists? Right. And then even more with the work that I do at Faith in Texas, when we visit some white congregations, they're empty. Like they were empty. And this was way before the pandemic. And I remember visiting white Seventh-day Adventist churches and they were empty too. And I think that Black people, I want to choose my words correctly in a way to say that I think worship is important to Black people. I think church is important to Black people. I think Black church is one of the few institutions that's ran by Black people, that the money is Black commerce, and that it's an important aspect of our life. But I also think that it's also we're also in a generation where we're more critical and we're beginning to ask questions like, yes, this is important to my life, but is it the way that it's being done? And is the way that it's being done necessary? Right? Like, I don't feel like I can express my faith in a space like this because it's very still archaic in some ways and things like that. But white Adventists, they are far and wide and almost hard to be found. And they have kind of said, no, I'm good. Y'all can have it. Y'all take it. Y'all do the crusades. Y'all do the evangelism stuff. We'll just make sure we stay in power. We have our positions of power, but y'all go ahead and do it. And I'll be like, yeah, we'll do it. Pitch a tent, keep doing that old school type of thing.
Yeah.
And I think that it's not translating to my generation and lower. Mm-hmm. It's not translating. It's not hitting the same way.
Yeah, I agree. Marie poses a question. I don't know if it's a question, but it's a statement. I feel like it's worth us kind of talking through it.
Yeah.
All right. Hey, Marie. She says, it has become trend to bash the church. I don't see how this is helpful. The church is the family of believers. Would you publicly disparage your own family, or would you work to try to improve it? It has been my observation that the biggest critics of the church do the least to try to improve it.
So, all right, let's unpack the whole question. So I don't believe the church is a family. I think we'd be faking it. I think we'd be going in there and we call people brother and sister.
Talk about it.
And we ain't truly brother and sister.
Talk about it. Let's start there.
I think we be going in there and we be acting like, yes, this is brother so, this is sister so and so, and brother so and so and sister so and so. We don't talk during the week. We only see each other on Saturday. So that's not a family, right? I think in some churches you do have that. I think the smaller churches you do have that family experience.
Dynamic, yeah.
But my point is that even within a family setting, you have conversations around your Thanksgiving table that are critical, and you call people out.
True.
I don't see it as bashing the church. I don't see it as being critical about something, as bashing it. I see it as speaking in a way to say, how can we improve it? You should be free enough to share your opinion about something that you invest money into.
Yeah.
Right? And so I believe that we definitely do need to say to some things like, this isn't working as it is, as a family. And as a family, we disagree, but at the end of the day, we know that we're family. So I don't see it as, I think it's through the lens that you look at it. And that's definitely true. There are people that criticize that don't want to do anything to improve it. That's in everything.
Yeah.
That's at the workplace. That's a country, right? Like, I don't like what's happening in the government, but I'm not gonna vote, right? Like, that's the same thing. Essentially the same thing, right? But I don't think that it should ever quell or to change you from saying or prevent you from saying something that you say, hey, I think this would be best. I look at it as it is. I look at it as a bad thing if something's not going right to just sit there and not say nothing.
Right. Yeah.
If you feel like something, I feel like that's not what God created or the place that God wants us to be. I believe God gave us a brain and a mouth to use and to use it in a loving way, in a constructive way, and a way that can help to benefit to say. But sometimes those conversations are hard.
Yeah, I mean, when you think about the part of bashing the church, I think in any family, in a healthy family, if there's something that I know that you're doing that I don't like, I'm going to let you know, hey, I don't like what you did. Let's go ahead and see how we can work towards fixing it, right? I think Jesus himself, our example, he did his own, I don't want to say bashing. I don't want to use the word bashing, but he did his own.
He criticized
criticizing the church. So today,
the religious system.
Exactly. So today, we're reading the book of Luke for family worship. We did Mark. Now we're on to Luke. And today's verse, today's part. I don't remember what part of Luke it was, but it talked about how on the Sabbath day,
Jesus he fed his disciples and And the Pharisees and scribes were very angry that
Right.
he did that on the Sabbath day.
And the scribes and Pharisees were upset because he was also healing on the Sabbath.
Right.
Right. So it was almost
That was
like,
it, yeah.
So it's almost like Jesus is like, you got to be kidding me. Like, you are more concerned about withholding this tradition of sorts than the healing of a man. Like, how does that make sense, right? And I think to your point that you're making, I feel like where we idolize the church so much that we completely negate humans, like people. And I think that's what Tye Tribbett, when you listen to the entire show, he talked about like it's supposed to be about the people, but it seems as though the church becomes more of like, how did he say it? Like,
I don't know how, I don't remember how he said it, but I think I feel like it's became more about the building than the actual people.
but he was saying like serving people. Sorry, I lost my train of thought. He was talking about serving people. And so it was just almost like the church is more concerned about serving the kind of people that look a certain way, that dress a certain way, but not serving people, right? We kind of we kind of say, well, we won't serve this kind of people, or we're not focusing on this kind of people. We're only focusing on ourselves, right? So you often talk about the show that we do from Sabbath to Sabbath. Like it speaks to it's not about the people. It's about serving ourselves.
Yeah. I agree. Anderson asked a question: is there a difference between being critical and having a critique and bashing? There is a difference, right? There is a difference with being critical, and critical can come from a good place, right? We're basically taught in school to be critical.
Critical thinkers.
Mm-hmm. You want your children to ask questions. You want them to think critically and analytically about everything. It just feels like, when we go to church, we just turn off our thinking caps.
Right. We become docile and
and
we just become quiet.
we don't ask no questions. We don't ask how money is being spent, how money is being distributed. We don't ask like, how did this get passed or anything. It's like, preacher get up there and say whatever he want to say, or she get up there and say whatever she want to say. And like all thinking stops and thinking begins when we go back to work. We become critical and asking questions when we go back to work. It's like we've almost trained ourselves or trained people to stop thinking when they come to church.
Mm-hmm. And we see it as like if someone like Tye Tribbett, who comes out and says the institution is whack, like we're trained to think that is an attack on us or attack on God.
No. And God basically, Jesus came and flipped the whole system, turned it upside down. And, when you really want to get into it, churches were new phenomenons that were created the same time they changed Saturday to Sunday. Jews had temples, and the Jews had temples or synagogues, and the Catholics had their temples. Jews had synagogues. And what Jesus came to do was different. He didn't create churches. They were like added after. And so when Constantine wanted to, bring these two different factions together, he said, okay, I got to do something different. I got to create one building where they can worship. Let's create it like a theater after the Roman Basilica, and let's change Saturday to Sunday. Right? But we often miss that because like when we talk about we're Protestants and we're not Catholic, we got a whole lot of stuff from Catholicism all up in our stuff. But what Jesus, when you look at the Dorcas, people met in houses. That word ecclesia is translated as fellowship. They met in houses, and when they would get 30 or more people, then they would start another one. So it wouldn't get packed and become mega and big and all this other stuff. But, you bring Westernism in it, you bring capitalism in it, you bring quantity over quality in it, and you got to have more because that's just what America's about, more, and takeover and all of this other stuff. It loses itself. It loses its mission. It loses its purpose. People get lost, people get hurt, people get damaged. And then it falls apart. Like, and people leave, and then you don't even know when people leave. Like, the most successful ones, churches, are the ones that have functioning small groups.
Yep. Where they're meeting the need of the people. Bottom line. Rodney, it's been a while since we've seen you on seen your name pop up on our chat, but he says the institution is at times whack because it's being run by some crazy folk. I don't expect the church to be perfect because folk are folk. We have to be the change we want to see. Every change happens at the grassroots, who forwarded change from the bottom up.
Yeah. Man, there was a point. There was something that Tye Tribbett said that I think we glossed over. And was the point of, now, I think what's also important before I make this point is Tye Tribbett is not in a system that we're in. He's in where churches are independent. Adventists, we have a system.
Yes.
Like, I think his concept of system is different from our concept of system. But nevertheless, I agree with him that systems are whack. Mm-hmm. They need to be updated, just like your computer.
Right.
Just like your phone. Mm-hmm. It needs to be updated because that software was created back then. This software is better. We're fixing bugs and all that other stuff, right? Mm-hmm. But he said this. He was like, I believe that there are a lot of pastors who don't know how to pastor. And he said that, I think he said something to the degree where like they just studied to become a pastor, but they don't know what it means to pastor. And I thought about that because of what Rodney said when he was like, the institution is at times whack because it's run by some crazy folk. Mm-hmm. And so I do believe that there is sincerity in Tye Tribbett's comment that there are some people who study to be pastors who are not pastors, who do not care about shepherding people, who sometimes care about the politics, who sometimes care about getting into an office, who sometimes hide behind the whole idea of being a pastor, but only use it for their own political gain. Mm-hmm. And I think that is something serious that needs to be addressed. Mm-hmm. I'll even say this. Mm-hmm. I believe that there are pastors who become pastors with good intentions, and then they realize while they're pastoring that they're not called to it, or they're not, this is not like their ideal fitting. And that there's no opportunity or sometimes spaces for them to be transparent and to say that, or opportunities within the system to say, okay, we notice that this isn't your strength or your specialty. How do we create something for you? But we'll leave them in churches. Yep. They'll die out,
say that,
burn out. Members get angry. People get angry because they're not performing how they should be performing. And then they end up bitter and just like, I'm done.
Now you're talking specifically in our system. You're not talking about other systems.
And you know what? To be honest, I'm speaking specifically to our system.
Okay.
But I won't be surprised if it translates into other systems as well. Just like how we're noticing that all churches are struggling right now with attendance. Yeah.
The only reason I asked is because I don't know her name, the girl that's on there, that's the only girl that's in the room. She said, she spoke to the fact that a lot of Instagram pastors, as she coined the title, Instagram pastors are on there who are basically, that's what they are. They're Instagram pastors. Like they are very showy, and it's almost like the pimping pastors, but just now they're on. Now you kind of see them on Instagram.
Yes, her name, Adrian. Her name is Jess Hilarious.
Okay, yes,
yeah, she used to be on that show we used to watch. Yeah,
yeah. So to her point, where the system is, where a pastor starts a church, builds the church, and that is kind of like his thing, right? Where it's like not a part of like our system, where our system, we have pastors, a pool of pastors, and they kind of get shuffled around as they, whatever, versus those pastors, it seems Like they are in that space for as long as they want to, until they die and retire, and then they probably have someone who is going to fill that position. So I think that's different in terms of I don't know if it's accountability or with the shuffling or them realizing that this is not a good fit. Like they're essentially they're stuck there. Like there's nothing they can do, or they can't necessarily move anywhere. Versus us in our denomination, you get moved around. But to your point about when there is a pastor or pastors who isn't a good fit for that congregation, essentially the pastor dies and the church dies, right? And then they're probably taken up and put to another church, and the same kind of pattern happens without like realizing and saying, hey, your strength is in this area, or I think this congregation will fit you best.
Yeah, or not even just a good fit for church, not a good fit for ministry.
Mercy.
On a whole, pastoring on a whole.
Mercy.
And that can be on both sides of the coin. They can just be, I think there are different types or different categories, right? One category can be in the idea of not good for pastoring. You are not good for pastoring if you are using this politically. If you are only trying to just climb to the top and put yourself in a position, I don't think you're good for pastoring. I also think you're not good for pastoring if you're unhappy, if you're burnt out, you're tired, and you just don't feel inspired. I also think that you're not good for pastoring. Now, on both sides of the coin, either one, there needs to be some level of transparency or something to help mitigate those type of situations. But I don't even know how to do that, where to start, or where to go. I think I may have just opened up a can of worms just now, Pandora's box.
But here's the thing. I think even if there was supposed to be transparency with you going to your president or whomever the administration is and saying that, I honestly don't think that our system has systems set up to be able to create resources or support around that to help you. Let's be honest.
Yeah.
Right? So I think that's where it's like a dead end. Like if I do say that, if I do put myself out there and say that, then what is the remedy? Like what support systems are there in place to help to do that, right? And honestly, let's be honest, we don't have that.
Yeah, and it's not, I'm going to say, and it's not just within the Adventist system. I don't know. Yo, so pause. Gamal did stand-up comedy.
I can't with y'all. Not tonight.
No, dead serious. He had a show.
For real?
Yes, Gamal, confirm for me in this chat right now.
Wait a minute, but is it okay for you to put him on Front Street like that?
He posted it on Facebook.
Oh, okay.
There's a picture of him standing up with a microphone with a curtain behind it, and it looks like he is doing stand-up. So Gamal, I want you to confirm if you did stand-up, because I'm going to go straight to YouTube. I'm going to find it.
And we're going to put it. We're going to play it.
And I'm going to throw tomatoes at my computer screen, if that's true.
Snap.
No, I got Gamal's hilarious. But sorry for taking the pause or the break. I think that it is across the board. I think that it's across the board. I don't think it's just Adventism. I think it's across the board when it comes to pastoring, and I think you're going to see, I think we're seeing it, and you're going to continue to see a lot less people choosing to pastor.
Yes, you are right about that. You are right about that. Winston says, how many of our pastors are capable of caring for their congregation needs? Well,
I don't know. You know, I do know that as a pastor, I know that 8 years of going to school did not prepare me for pastoring.
Wow.
Did not. It's almost like you start over, your education process starts over the day you are assigned to a church.
So let me ask a question. What exactly did you use from seminary, undergrad as well, that what did you use at all? Were you able to use anything to help you in your pastoral ministry from undergrad and from seminary?
I believe I did. I just can't maybe identify it. I'll just say this. The stuff that I learned in school, I didn't have to pay $40,000
Mercy.
for it. I think what I got from school, and this, I'm going to tie it back to Tye Tribbett's point. I appreciate at my undergrad, Atlantic Union College, now defunct. I appreciate it. I appreciate Andrews University. I made some of the best friendships and relationships in those spaces. It gave me something. It did develop me in other ways, like discipline, waking up to go to class, doing assignments, kind of discipline I didn't have before I went to college, right? Because prior to me going to college, I was bugging out. So yes, I believe that. But now when I look back at all of those years of training and going to class, honestly, and maybe I'm speaking just, off the top of my head and I'm trying to really think. Honestly, I feel like all the money I paid for that stuff, I could have got it on my own. Actually, I feel like all the stuff that I'm preaching and doing now, I did not learn that in school. I learned that sitting under Dr. Blue when I was at Ephesus. I learned a lot when I got my own assignment when I was at Bethany. I learned a lot when I was at City Temple, and I'm still learning more today. And not, like all of that Calvinism and all that other stuff, and maybe preaching a little bit, but even preaching, you still learn. Preaching is still a practice that people don't get until 40 years later. You're still trying to find your voice and develop sermons. So I may have gotten like tools to help write a sermon, but I've abandoned all those tools now. I've got a whole completely different way and different style. So yeah, I mean, maybe I'm not the best person to ask that question.
No, you are the best person because this is your experience. It is not to take away from it. Of course, I'm sure if you ask someone else, they probably have a completely different take and perspective. I don't think your perspective is the gold seal, right? It's not like the standard, but it is a perspective for sure that's worth, considering, as we look at just thinking about, I think all schools of thought, when you think about it, because I would say in education, though, it's very specific to what it is that I did as an educator. Of course, you learn, some of us learn best or learn in the field, right? When we take those practicum courses or where we start teaching, like what your college professor taught you, it's not the same as you are actually in the classroom, learning on the fly, learning and kind of creating your own kind of thoughts around education. So I think it's similar in that way. So it's not to take away or to add. It's just your experience.
Yeah. For me, why I'm always critical of my undergrad and grad school experience, and I don't know how it's changed to now, but it did not prepare me, I feel, to go preach in a urban setting.
Wow.
I did not learn. While I was in seminary, I did not have a class, or I was not in a place where I was encouraged or I had to read Howard Thurman, Frederick Douglass, Martin Luther King's Jr., Chaos or Community, where I had to read books that spoke to the Black experience through a theological lens. And maybe if I went to Oakwood, I probably would have. But I went to AUC and then I went to Andrews. When I came out and I was in Harlem in the midst of gentrification and looking at the members that were sitting in those pews, many who have been marginalized, many who have been victims of a system that was against their skin color. When I looked at the community of 123rd and Lenox and what was happening with Columbia University, my development and my training came sitting under Dr. Blue and being in the community. When I got to Bethany, I learned more. And then when I came to Texas, I became even more transformed. Right? And so that's when I say, like, what I learned in those seminary classes, I didn't have to pay. I felt like I wasted money on the education component. I feel like it's good if I was like, to think and to be in certain circles, but there was no way I could have been able to sit in a space with African-American thought leaders and speak eloquently about what's happening in the Black church and in the Black community because I wasn't exposed to that stuff.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think what's crazy is, I say crazy lightly, but what's kind of insane, that's not even better, that's not even a better choice of words, is the fact that most of the pastors, African-American pastors, are put into churches that are impoverished. Right?
Yeah, if
our black churches are essentially, majority of our Black churches are in impoverished communities where people are just dealing with a whole lot, right? But you're not taught how to deal with those in those kind of environments. And it's the same for education as well. If most of the time, like the what we're taught in school doesn't prepare us for that child who has been affected by poverty, affected by, so many different things that's going on in their environment. Like, we don't have that training. Like, that training comes literally on the fly. But again, I think it's interesting that the majority of the pastors who are African American, as soon as they leave seminary, they go right into these communities that aren't what seminary taught you to kind of be.
Yeah, they give you that generic cookie cutter, learn this stuff. Half that stuff I read in seminary, I can't preach that stuff. I cannot go and step in no pulpit. Everybody trying to hear about Calvinism and all these other big crazy words that we had to take tests for. Though them people want to know, how am I going to put food on my table tomorrow? How am I going to keep my lights on?
Right. We over here trying to tell them to not eat meat.
Right.
And they're like,
yeah.
do you not understand that eating meat is far cheaper than not?
Right. And here's the thing, right? And these are always my views. These are not anybody else's views. These are my views.
These are your views.
I believe that the seminary teaches you to uphold the institution, to protect the institution, to protect the system.
Tell me more.
I mean, because you're taught to come out and to defend it. Defend these doctrines, defend these teachings, defend the system, because the system is ordained by God. This is what God said. So when you get out, you're learning for 8 years, 4 years, you're learning all about the theological practices within the system, so that when you go into these churches, you are going in there to stand up and fight for this system.
Wow.
So until you have a matrix experience, you're like, hold up. First of all, I need to preach to where these people are. And then you start looking at the system and you're like, the system is not giving anything back to these people.
Mercy.
You have to kind of say like, oh, okay, hold up. Let me pump the brakes.
Wow.
Let me pump the brakes, because these people don't need system. These people need I want to be cool and creative. Let me just be so. These people don't need system. They need a savior. They need to know that their savior walks with them while they are on the welfare line.
Wow.
That their savior fights with them in family court. That their savior is with them.
Wow.
Whether they are behind bars or their sons or their daughters are locked up, their savior is with them when their police are beating them and harassing them. That's what these people need to hear and know.
Right.
They don't need to know more about how to give more money to a system that does not give back to them.
Wow. Wow. Or how to almost like force, like you have to stop doing this, stop doing that in order to be a part of the system.
Yeah. You got to talk this language. You got to dress this way.
You have to know the fundamentals and the jewelry, and then, you know, taking off your jewelry and doing this and conforming and conforming and conforming. And it's just so deafening, honestly. Like, it's like a
yeah, and the results are happening because the people are bucking against the system. They're like, I don't want that. I believe the people, and that's why I think I don't think churches should go away. I think we do need corporate worship, but we do need to look at what we're doing in there and stop over doctrinizing people to walk the way you want them to walk and live.
Wow.
So Winston White asked the question, what am I doing? So I'm doing stuff. I do teach a cohort with pastors about community engagement. You know, I do this podcast. I would be glad to continue to, I'm always going to say what I got to say. I'm very direct. I've learned, people have said this to me, I didn't think I was, but people have said to me, I'm a very direct person. So I'll be direct and I'll say what I have to say and you take it or leave it. But I am doing some courses with some leaders and some pastors to kind of helping them understand their calling is bigger than the system. That their calling is to the community, and like how do you take what you know and apply it so that it becomes transformative and create real sustainable social change.
But more of the money should stay in the local church.
Absolutely.
Marie asked, how do you think Jesus would do it? Honest question.
Let me tell you, my honest answer is Jesus would not be a part of this. I believe that Jesus would take 12 homeless people, matter of fact, 11 homeless people and a prostitute, and they would go around the world or wherever and preach and teach and feed people. I don't think he would take anything from anybody. I don't think he would. I believe that when Jesus was on earth, he was clearly looking at institutions that were exploiting people and saying, shut this down, flipping over tables. He was walking through their cornfields, mashing their corn because it was proven that Pharisees and scribes controlled the agriculture and they were using the money to fatten their pockets, and he purposely destroyed that corn. He went over to Gadara and he cast those pigs into the water because it was an underground system of using those pigs in a Jewish colony for underground systems and money. He flipped over those tables in the temple because Jesus, and that's the thing about that, we have a sanitized version of Jesus that we preach in churches. Jesus was a rebel in so much that the state killed him because of his power, because he was messing things up. The church, I mean, he was so hated that the church, the religious institution, colluded with the Roman government and said, we got a common problem right now. There's this guy, Jesus, who's got people following him, who's got people doing stuff.
Yeah.
And we need to kill him because if we let him stick around, we ain't gonna be able to handle these people because they feeling very mightily empowered right now.
Mercy. My God.
They are very empowered by this guy. Give us Barabbas, kill that one.
Wow.
But we there is a sanitized version of Jesus to think that he was like, that he was an Adventist.
Wow.
Or he was a Baptist. Or he was a Catholic. Or whatever, however, right? You can make him look like whatever you want to be. But when you read it for what it was, that brother was not controlled by nothing or nobody. That man was out there causing trouble. He would say problematic stuff that would mess up the religious system.
And it did. Because every single time he showed up wherever, they were like, they're ready to kill him. They're ready to literally throw him over a cliff.
That man was starting a movement. That man had a movement. He had people marching. He had poor people feeling like where they belonged with the power.
Yeah.
He was taking the power out of the religious institution.
Mercy, God.
And they could not stop him because he was just using the scriptures. He was like, oh, David picked, but you didn't have a problem when David picked. You know what David did in the temple, and David picked you, and they would just have to shut up and walk away. And so they were like, since we can't beat him with words, we're gonna kill him. But killing him only made his legacy even stronger.
Mercy.
And when you follow history, whenever there is somebody who has power, who is leading people to go against the system, they always gonna take that person out.
Wow.
They always gonna shoot a MLK.
Wow.
They always gonna kill a Malcolm X. They always gonna kill a Fred Hampton. They always gonna kill a Marcus Garvey. They gonna kill whoever has a power to be able to buck against the system and empower poor. Now understand, empower poor people.
Yeah.
That's right. They always gonna find a way to wipe you out. There's no time. The system, what's the word? The system. The tactics have not changed. Mm-hmm. The game is still the same.
Wow. My God. I don't even have anything to say after you just said that.
Yeah, and I knew somebody was gonna say, Rodney, I knew you were gonna say that. On the flip side, we have Trump. That's right. Now that is the flip side. Because he's not leading people to empower poor people. He's the Pied Piper. He's empowering the rich while he's playing his little flute to make those, suburban white folk think that he's really on their side. He is not for them. They can never stay in one of his hotels. They can never, ever sit next to him in a restaurant. He don't want nothing to do with them, but just to use them for their votes. And if you can't see that, just look at how he ran his campaign. Mm-hmm. He's an actor. He's an actor. And he knows how to work a crowd.
But would you say that he's good? He's not necessarily...
He's a jerk.
Okay, Laura.
Shout out to Laura Patterfoot.
In comparison to Trump, do you think that, like, I don't know, I see where Rodney's going.
Yeah, I see where Rodney's going, but the difference between
he's not for the poor or the people that are like, he's not a voice crying out for those people that are marginalized or people that are will never he's not trying to fight for those people to somehow come up.
No.
Right?
No.
So I feel like it's not the same.
No, he's a narcissist. Jesus was not a narcissist. Fred Hampton, MLK, those kind of people, they didn't have he's a sociopath.
Mercy.
He has sociopath tendencies and characteristics. He's delusional. Mm-hmm. He is the total opposite. He is not he is a white supremacist. That's what he is. And he caters to that white supremacist language. Yeah. So he is not the kind of leader that is actually trying to empower or to create a system that empowers poor people. Because if you look at his tax cuts were for the
Rich.
the 1%. You look at his cabinet and his policies. Now, look, I don't want to get political or anything, because I think on both sides they're both problematic, Democrat and Republican. But Trump is a buck against the system because I'm rich and I'm a narcissist. And I like power. People who have power do everything in their ability to give more power, not to get more power. They empower. They don't disempower. So you don't disempower one group of people to make yourself look better.
Right.
Right? So you would try to empower all people. So
And that's definitely not Jesus.
right, definitely not. He was giving away. He's like, I'm giving you power. You got power. You know, he's like Oprah, power you. You got power. You got power.
Yeah, you are right about that. Yeah, you said a lot of great things. I always love to hear you speak, because this is your thing. Like, you are, it's like I feel your passion just coming through truly when you talk when we talk about these kinds of things about the church, the systems, and all the things. I think it's important for us to be mindful, and I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. Be mindful. I think everybody, majority of the people I believe that are watching this podcast tonight are Adventists. And I don't think there's anybody here, at least for me, there's nothing that would make me give up my Adventism. I actually want for my daughters, our daughters, to have what we had growing up, right? The community that the Adventism brought, that family, you know, AY, social, basketball. I'm saying that there are, and Tye Tribbett said this too, there are beautiful things that I gained by being a Seventh-day Adventist. I actually believe that it actually saved my life in many ways and steered me in the right direction. I'm not giving that up. I'm not letting go of that. I'm not changing my religion for anything else, because all of them are messed up, just like ours. But what I am critical of is the fact that we are still running on a system, on an operating system that was created in the 1800s. And that operating system has not been updated to the place where it's matching what people are looking for today. And I think that we have to, for the survival of it, we can't keep putting new wine into old wineskins. That I think that we need to look critically at like how things are being done, the way it's being done, and is it still working? That's all I'm saying. It's like, for some people, most people, you don't want whatever car you drive, you don't want that car to look the same way it did in 1970 in 2024. You want to see them, you want to believe that there is somebody who's redesigning it, who's making it smarter, who's making that car more adaptable to 2024. Now, you might like your 1970 car. You might say, you know, I like having a different key to open the door and a key to open this. But you do want to, you would at least like to see that there's some updates to it. Your phone operating system. Every now and then there's an update, because, and then when you read the contents of the update, they says this update is to fix
Bugs.
you know, to update bugs and do some security and stuff like that. So there's people that's looking at it. And my question is, who is looking at our system and who is saying, okay, we need to update this operating system?
Yeah. Unfortunately, there isn't anyone who's looking and who is brave enough to change it, to put systems in place to start to change it in a way that is effective, in a way that's updated, where our kids honestly can experience what we experience. And it's almost like a fight. Like who is it?
I appreciate the shout out, Marie.
Camilla. What's up, girl? It's been a minute since we've seen you in the comments. She says, listen, the way it breaks my heart that I have to build community outside of the church for my kids because the family aspect isn't the same. Let me tell you, I'm that comment almost like I'm almost like to tears because I felt that in my heart.
Yeah.
I feel that in my heart. We have to now go to create those communities for our families outside of the church. Like, that is heartbreaking. And for those, and this may not be the experience of everyone, right? There may be some of you watching who you guys have a community within your church, like you grew up in the same thing, like your kids now are experiencing that. It just seems as though for some of us, it's a fight to kind of like find that community or find the same community that I had growing up now for my kids. So it's like, what spaces can we create outside of that? We were just talking to some of our friends about this. Like, we now have to literally go out and create those environments just to make sure, not to make sure, but just to kind of find community for our kids. Like, that's not okay.
Yeah. And I miss that. And, and sometimes I say, can it even come back? Right? Because when we were kids, church was life, right? Like, we didn't have devices that can take us on the internet, and we could talk to people whenever we want to. So it's like, I mean, I pray for AY leaders, right? Like, I pray for youth pastors because this is a whole different ball game. But I do believe people need community. I do believe that we do need each other. I believe that we do still need church. I do believe that we do need updates. Like, I remember I was listening, I think this was when Barna, the church commissioned Barna to do a study. And they were like, Seventh-day Adventists, you have a problem. And this was years ago. And Barna Group, and if you don't know who Barna Group is, they're like the outside source that studies all churches. I mean, they wrote a great book called Pagan Christianity. And they basically came in and studied us and did surveys. And they said, you have this problem. You're using young people. And this was like back in 2006 or 7. They were like, you have an issue, a problem. And like, I heard like there was an NAD meeting and I watched it. And the guy was like, one of the guys, I forgot his name.
I remember.
They're like, yeah, we're losing people in churches and we know what the solution is. And basically the solution is to plant more churches. And I was like, are you serious? That's what you came up with? That is the idea. I've never heard of somebody who has a restaurant and it's like, yo, people aren't coming to my restaurant.
Right. I'm going to
open another restaurant. You ain't even start with, maybe we should change the menu.
Right.
Maybe we should take some items off the menu.
Right.
Or maybe we should add some, or maybe we should change our hours.
Right.
You say, let's go open up another restaurant.
Another restaurant.
We'll get more people. Like,
have mercy, God.
I mean, those are the updates.
Those are the updates.
Those are the software updates.
Because you know what it is? Because I'm going to assume, I'm going to assume that for companies like Apple or whatever other big companies that are Samsung, whoever, Sony. Right? I'm going to assume that they don't have their grandfathers at the seat, at the seat in the chair that's saying, all right, I think it's time for an update. I doubt highly that there are even 40-year-olds, maybe I doubt that there are 60-year-olds that are sitting at the head of those tables talking about it's time for updates. Yeah,
I think it was Kurt Franklin. And so he was being interviewed. This was before this last album. And I think someone asked him the question, like, how do you stay relevant? Like, how do you make music that's still appealing to people? And he basically said, I talk to young people. I have a table, or I make sure that I make albums and I talk to people in the culture currently about what I should do and shouldn't do. So he's not sitting at a table with Fred Hammond,
Right.
Hezekiah Walker,
Yeah.
Donnie McClurkin,
Yeah.
and those people talking about what are some ideas for how, I should do this album. He said, I'm going to go talk to Chandler Moore over at Maverick City because I see what they're doing. I like that. And I think that's where we need to go, where, we can get into it's a whole nother podcast. I'm not, because I could spend hours talking about it. But I think that's like, to your point, that who's at the table? Right? Who's at the table? Does the table look like what we saw at the State of Union address, Congress? A bunch of old folk. And I'm old folk now.
Yeah, you're old.
Yeah.
We're old.
Older.
We're definitely older. And I think if we have more people, forward-thinking people at the table, then maybe we can move something. Maybe some things can move. But I feel as though, like, if we just have the same folk sitting at the table who don't see the need for an update, but instead they feel as though we should probably go back to what it was, we're going to hit a lot of dead zones. Like, we're going to have a lot of moments where we aren't relevant.
Yeah. That's the problem. They still referring to us, my age group, as the youth.
Yeah, it's pretty sad, because the other day we were looking at the service and I was telling Jaime, I was just like, the same rhetoric, like, the youth are our future, right? Like the children are our future. I'm like, we were children. And they said we were the future. Yeah. But then they kept us back where they said we couldn't do certain things on programs. We couldn't lead, right? We couldn't be leaders in our own right. And so it's like, it's just interesting to hear the same rhetoric. Yeah, the youth are our leaders. The children are our future. And I'm just like, nah, they not. Right. They're lying. Because the same people are sitting in the same seat talking about the people, the children are our future.
Yes, Billy. That's creative thinking. Yes, absolutely. Mental health practitioners. Absolutely. They need to be at the table. There needs to be a new table shaping and creating what this church should look like for today and tomorrow.
Yeah. Yeah. That would be so impactful.
Yeah.
And not just inviting youth to the program and having them sit in the congregation and say, this is a program for the youth, and the youth are not the ones at the table planning it. Like, we got to do better. We have to do better. Like, you can't just want the youth, their bodies, but not their thoughts, not their ideas. Like, that's not okay. Mm-hmm. We just kind of use it to say, well, we just had the whole church is filled with youth. No.
Jermaine, I'm gonna send you my Cash App, Jermaine. Shout out to Jermaine, man. It's been a minute, boy, since I seen you. I hope you out there still killing it, man. Wherever you are ministering now these days.
Mercy, Dorian, it's been a while since we've seen you, girl. Get to see you in the comments.
I know.
She says, I watched the service where the members addressed the youth elders and they were in their 50s and 60s.
That's when you do that. What's that thing with...
You can't be serious. That's some, I don't know, man. I don't know.
Yep. And if somebody don't see a problem with that, then what we doing? That's like the emperor, what was it? The emperor has no clothes. Mm-hmm. And then the one girl is like, he's naked.
Basically. Yeah, I think it's, as we wrap up, I think that, you guys should go ahead and go look at the entire interview that Tye Tribbett had on the Breakfast Club, because I feel like it's relevant. I think also the piece that that we didn't even talk about was when Charlemagne and the others, they were like, we don't go into church. We actually like being able to sit in the comfort of our own home and just be able to turn on the TV and get a word, and then we're done.
Maybe it could be part 2.
And then the guy was like, his kids often used to get frustrated in the morning, Sunday morning, because what to put on, what to wear, their hair, all the things. And he's just like, now we just gather in the living room, and that's church for us. So it takes away from the the frustrations that parents go through, and even like, just trying to get your kids to get in the mood for church and all those things. And so the majority of them, if not all of them, including Tye Tribbett, whose service is now online, they're just like, yeah, we just go online. We're not going to the building because we don't see the reason for going into the building.
Yeah.
So I think that's a shift as well, where less people are going into the building, and now you can sample services. Like, you can literally go on and say, I don't like what's happening here, I'm going to go to this church. I don't like what's happening here. Or, you take a little bit of this, take a little bit of that. In real time, you couldn't do that, right? You can't travel from church to church in that way. But now we have access to the internet, and
church is on demand. It's like Hulu and Netflix. You just
basically
turn on whichever one you want,
basically,
watch it, and go to another one,
and we're done.
Yep.
Like, amen.
It's like
and then
Paramount Plus.
It's true. So that's also a phenomenon that I think some churches got it. Some Adventist churches, I think they have it in terms of like marketing. I don't want to say marketing, but I want to say marketing to those individuals who prefer to have like an online experience. And then there's some people who just wants to go in. So I think we're missing, I think the church, I don't say we, I think the church is missing a lot of opportunities and like just really being effective in its ministries. And I don't know, if we're being honest, Jaime, I don't know if we can, if there is change, or if there's going to be a change in the system, because Jesus himself came and tried to change the system, but the system went right back into what it was, right? Like, nothing changed. Actually, I think it got worse, because now, yes, we have we have a savior to look forward to, as an example, and we now have salvation where we are able to inherit eternal life.
Yeah.
But when we think about the system that Jesus himself was trying to fight, they went right back to what they were the moment they decided to kill him. So of course it changed. Like, there was change, and correct me if I'm wrong, but there was change in that, the early church and all those things. But I still feel like it still created the system.
Yeah, I think this is what's going to happen. I think that something is going to grow out of this. I think there's going to be something else. I think that there's going to be a group of people that are going to say, this is not working, and they're going to create their own thing.
You think so?
Mm-hmm. I think they're eventually going to be like, nah, I don't want to be a part of this anymore, and something organically is going to grow. I think it's just like, I don't know. I feel like I look at everything through examples and what's happened before. Like the point you made, the scribes and Pharisees, they kept the system as it was. Mm-hmm. And then Jesus came, and after he died, there was this new movement. Mm-hmm.
True.
That system stayed, and there was a new movement that rose up. So I do believe that there is a movement that is going to happen. I don't know when it's going to happen. I believe it's probably already happening. That is going to move out of what is already established, and it will have some elements, but it will be different. Because if one or two things, if it continues to stay the way it is, people are going to look at it and be like, you know what? You is who you is. I'm going over here. I'm going with this group, and I'm going to create my own small group. And something is going to, so a charismatic leader may rise up or something. It may still have some of the tenets within it, and it's going to be a movement. McDonald's had the monopoly for a little bit. And Wendy's came on the scene and Burger King came on the scene, and they were like, okay, y'all doing the burgers that way? We're going to make our burgers this way. And a movement happened. The same thing with the Adventist church. There was the Methodist church. We looked at it. Our theology was different. The movement came. We started our own thing. And then out of us came Church of Seventh Day. I think it's going to eventually push people in a different direction because people are just not as engaged, and it's not hitting like it wasn't before. And it's going to, I believe, that's my opinion. That's how I'm seeing it. That's what I feel like. I don't know if it's going to happen in my lifetime or what, but I feel like there's something that is bubbling, that is waiting to happen.
That's an interesting take.
So I think like what you said, I think like the way the system is, it's going to be that way. I don't think they're changing. I think they're investing their efforts in other countries. They're not investing their efforts here in America. And I just believe that right now what we're seeing is people pulling away, because you go back like pre-pandemic and post-pandemic, when you go back in some of these churches, it's not the same people in there anymore. And if it is the same people, it's 1/3 of what was there before. Where have all those people gone? Where are those people?
Only God knows.
Yeah, but the system is still the same. But people are just like, and I believe that people want to express their faith. And they're going to find a way to do it. You can't stop God's movement. It can't be limited to a box.
Wow. That's deep. That's deep.
And it's my opinion. It may not. I'm just opinion.
Yeah, that's deep. That's deep. I think it's just. I think as. Jesus. So many things. I think it was. Celia, I think it was. Celia. She says, worship is internal between that person and God in private. The public version has become performance, politics, profits. We should be worshiping in spirit and in truth. And this comes mainly from a one-on-one relationship with God when no one is looking. I agree. It is internal. And I know that there's just so many different pieces that are moving outside of us externally, and we have no control over those things. The only thing we have control over is our relationship, our walk with God. And I know sometimes it's easy to get distracted with all the external things that are happening. But I think as we're being critical, I think we also should be focusing on our internal walk with God, our relationship with God. Because I think that's because those things will continue to happen. I don't think it's going to stop. Us having this conversation, it's not going to necessarily move anything per se, right? I think the movement comes from within, right? That connection with God, in that we should be not idolizing it so much, right? That's why we haven't really talked about it for a while, because we were kind of like going hard with talking all things church. And we're like, wait, let's pull back, right? Because right now, I don't think that should be the focus. The focus shouldn't be more about that, but it should be about other things like living and how to, it should be more about us as people and how we live and how we thrive and how we struggle and how we do all the things, right? And so I think that's what it comes down to. What it comes down to is our walk with God. The system is whack. The institution is whack. But we know that what we do when no one is looking, that is what really it comes down to.
That's right.
That's where it matters. That's where the rubber meets the road. That's where it's at, honestly. Mm-hmm. So I think surmising all of it is walk with God and just make sure that we are
treat your neighbor right.
Treat others right. Amber came home today talking about the Beatitudes, and she's like, love the first commandment is love your, what is it? The most important commandment is love
your neighbor.
Love your neighbor as you love yourself. And so she was just like adamant, like, yes. And I'm just like, yes, that's what we should lead with.
Yeah, Amber is a trick. Remember when she was like, what was it, 2 or 3? She was like, I don't want to pray for my enemies or something. When she was like, we were saying the Lord's
when she was
Prayer.
around 2?
2, and she was just like, what? She was like, I don't want to pray for my enemy. She was so innocent with the 2. She was repeating the Lord's Prayer.
Yeah.
She was
She's
like,
I don't want to pray for them.
like,
and we're just like, we had to teach her, like, we do this because God, like every one of us, we're enemies with God. Like, in that way, like we really try to our best to explain that thing to girl.
Our girl was adamant. She was like, I'm not praying for no enemies. It's like, all right, that's how you interpret it. But
this is great.
Yeah, thank you for rocking with us for an hour and 38 minutes. And to Shane Smith, yes, we try to do this every Friday night. Whenever we're available. But yeah, you can catch us. We're going to start updating the podcast again. So you can listen to us in your car and on Spotify. But definitely you could go back to Facebook and you can catch some of the old episodes. And YouTube.
YouTube is probably the best way to go ahead and listen to it there, because it's all there. Opposed to like Facebook, you have to scroll through.
Right.
But I think in Instagram, not Instagram, what is it called? YouTube is the place to be for listening to all the other episodes that we have on here. But know that we love y'all. We hope that you guys have a good night, as the West Indians say. We hope that you guys have a wonderful Saturday, a wonderful week, and we'll see you, God willing, next week. This is Carlene.
This is Jaime.
Peace.
Peace.